YouTube, welcome back to Wtf Rc Cars. So we're carrying on with the XT8E 22 build, and we're moving along to the front arms. So let's see if we can crack on with this. So let's see. So we've got the front, and it looks like on this one we're going to need some spacers, so we've got them, and we need the front and front rear. So what we're starting with, go for the fronts. So it looks like this one we're going for the 1 degree and the hole to the outside. Have we got any more of them popped off? Nope. That's one to the side. That's one. So again, we're going for initial setup on all these, just setting them up as stock. So 1 degree and to the outside. So that's how we want them. And that is the front one. So right, front, that makes more sense. So going from this side, yeah, that's it. So you'll have to bear with me because I've got manual quite a bit away from me. So we want that, then we want some arms. So which way round are they going? They're going with the shock holes to the front, I believe. And it looks like you have the little X showing upwards. So they're going to sit that way round, and then we want one of them for each side, and a 2mm spacer is going to sit towards the front of the RC on the arms for initial setup. So it looks like they're going to come through, and then a 2mm spacer, and they do have a little X that I'm guessing is supposed to face up, although I'm not 100% sure if it'd make any difference if you got them entirely the other way around, because they look almost identical. You've got a little cut out there, I suppose. I'm not sure what that's for, whether it's for clearance for something, maybe for wheels. So that's got them in place, and then we're going for the front rear, and I believe it's the same orientation again for the little pills. So it looks like again we're going for 1 degree, and then the little dot on the outside. I have to find somewhere to keep all these. just make sure they're sat all the way in, and then again the 1 degree little dot on that side. And no spacer towards the rear. Yeah, there's no play in them. And then this time it's the shorter screws. So that's got his arms all together, and then we're going for, what size is that one? Is that a 2mm? And again these little group screws, and I think stock is 1.3mm poking through on these. Let's get these screwed in. And then these need to stick through bottom 1.3mm. That should give us close enough, so let's have a look. Again with these, I'm not too concerned about the initial setup of them, because I tend to change everything once the car's built to how I like it. But it gives you a starting area. Right, so that looks like that page is done. Right, now we've got to assemble the links. I believe these ones will be for the sway bar. Where's that gone? So these are 1.5mm, and I think the measurement on these to leave it out is 6mm. Pretty good guess. Pretty close. Let's get these screwed together. And then depending on which side you're going to be putting these, you need to kind of get them into an angle that's going to be close. There's an awful lot of little fiddly parts when you're doing the suspension. But hopefully we should get this one a bit quicker than the rear one. Gets easier as you go through, as you've a bit more practice at them. Right, so then we're going to want 2 of them and 2 of these little inserts, so we can get the olives into the bottom half. We'll do that on both these. And then you want to work out which orientation you've got it in and get the top retainers in for the sway bar. So as I'm working through this build, it's kind of the first time we've used this camera and this setup, one of the first videos we've done with it, or the first series, and I've got a lot to learn about this camera. As I mentioned earlier in the build of this X-Ray, it's a Blackmagic 6K Pro. We're running one of these Sigma lenses. I think it's Sigma. And I've got to get to grips with lighting and everything. See what angles work out best, what lighting works out best. It's a bit of a learning curve. Also getting to grips with DaVinci Resolve 17. It's quite a nice program I'm finding so far. Certainly utilises everything you've got in the PC better than some of the other programs. Seems more optimised. Now, looking at the design of this RC and the fact that they tell you not to fit any of the diff shims initially until it's fitted to the RC, and I think that's mainly just because of how this fastens down to the chassis, and in case it pulls it in or out at all, and then the idea is you fit it all down and then you take the lash out of the gears, so you just shim it to get rid of the excess play. But let's crack on. So now we want to fit the sway bar, and again the instructions tell you to just fit it to kind of that level, so it's not all the way through. It just seems to be just for the depth of the collar basically. And that's all it says insert it into. So we'll try and get that as close as I can. And then we're moving on to these. I think again these are 2mm X's. You just need to snug them up to it. And these are just to hold the anti-roll bar or sway bar. And then we want these tiny little grub screws, and these go in just to take that slop out of it. If you just give it a bit of a wiggle as you're tightening it up. can tell when it takes the slop out of it. Still a bit in that. You want it to be able to move nice and freely, just not too much play. Yeah, that'll do us. Right, so that is that bit finished by the looks of it. Right, we are now on to bag 06. Let's find something sharp to open this with. Right, what have we got now? We got lovely tie bars. So, what we're going to need on this one. So it looks like we're going to need a hub, and then we're going to want a bearing, and one large bearing. On the back of this, yeah, we're going to need 2 of these. So these are some of the smaller tapered head screws out of these bags. Then we want a drive shaft, and it's saying oil this time, not graphite grease. So where's those little drive pins? That's one. So we get some oil on that. We want that inside there, and then we want a drive pin, and we need to get that through the centre. that's going to sit through the bearing, and then we're going to want this hex drive, and we've got a little tiny pin, and again these have got little flats on them that face up towards the grub screw. You need to make sure you have them facing up. And then we're going to want a grub screw and a little dot of thread lock. Because we don't want his wheel X's coming off. That in, and then you want a 17mm spanner or wheel wrench, whatever you prefer to use. Get them tightened up. So that's one assembled. Then, so we've got right and left on these. So this one's going to be the right hand side, I believe. Let's double check it. Does it say anywhere on it? Yeah, right. So that's going to sit in. Going to need one of these inserts either side. If I can stop them falling out. And then that's going to slide inside the whole thing. And then we want those little domed head screws. I can't see any, doesn't say anywhere you need to put thread lock on these, but that's one built up, and then we need to repeat it again for the other side. So we're going to want that way and that way. There it is. So we want this little steering arm on, and then we're going to want those bearings in. Right, once we've got them in, we're going to need that, a drive shaft and one of these little pins, and it It says get plenty of oil on them, so let's oil these up. And then we need a tiny pin. Once we've got that in, we need his X drive, and then his retaining pin with the little cutout facing where your grub screw is going to tighten down to it. Now we want his grub screw and a bit of the thread lock again. This with its little inserts in. This is domed screws. It's definitely an area of contention where some people prefer the ball steering. From the RCs that I've got, feels like you have more control with C-hubs than the balls, and although C-hubs can break, the balls can pull through constantly, which ends up being a massive pain. But I suppose it's down to personal preference, really. Right, moving along to fitting this. So we need to locate that, and then we need a pin. It looks like, what do we have in the end of it? Is it one of them? Or is it any of them? They certainly go on the outside of it to change the caster. I believe it's these little things that sit on the inside. So it looks like they've got a tiny flat on them, and you have that towards the top, looks like, and then you put that on, and then that in, and then that sits inside, and that should slide through. Let's see if it all locates. And then I think it's just a case of wiggling this about until you line it up. then you've just pushed that in, and that's in place. Now let's have a look. I think it's these tiny little ones that go in here. I think they're the only ones with the heads big enough to hold this in. It looks like that'd be quite a quick way of changing the caster on it. So let's get the next one assembled. So basically that bushing slides inside and that slides inside that end, and then it's just a case of lining it up and then pushing it into position, and then you've just got to line it up with the sort of socket on the rear of it, and then in it goes. Wonder if these will drop out all the time like Armours do. I would be very surprised if they did. Right. So we've almost got some steering. Right, next we've got the turnbuckles for the steering. So it looks like we've got to get these down to a length of 54mm either side. So they're going to sit that way round. It looks like the longest goes to the outside. Now to locate these, I find it easier to spin them the wrong way and then you feel it click and then try and screw them on. Let's see if this will do it as well. Yeah, it feels like it. Yep, that's one. So this is going to mount up which holes we're using. So standard build is top center on them both. And no spacer in front at all. So let's see what size that is. It looks like it. So that's going to run top center, and then we're going to want a small locking nut on the back of it, and then it looks like the longer ones going through from the front, and again a locking nut on the back. So that's got one side screwed in. Moves nice and freely. So let's get this horrible thing to length. So let's get this one on. So again, going for top center on the rear. And then on the front, it's gonna sit through that one, the inner one. And on these on the C-hub side, I wouldn't try and over tighten these. Because they are locking nuts anyway, so. And you want the suspension to be nice and fluid, nice and loose. Right, let's see where we're at. So it looks like we're moving on to mounting them on the chassis. So we're going to need a chassis. So we want this little insert. It might be easier to fit that on there, and then that's basically going to sit on the chassis, and then it looks like we screw it down with those. So let's get these screwed in. And then we want that bracing. So the biggest gap goes to the rear. And which holes is it telling us to put them in? Three at side. So that one by the looks of it. Looks like that one we're using these shorter ones. So we need two of those with a nut on the top. A quick glance through instructions on this RC. There's a lot of options for adding weight strategically to different areas of the vehicle. something you might be into if you're more serious about racing. Right. Almost looking like an RC. So next we have this rear brace. It looks like that sticks all the way through. And it should go in between the rear wing support. Not that one. So it looks like it's that one. And that goes through from that side. So all we've got to do is get that all the way through. That's definitely going to be easier said than done. Let's see if we can line it up front back at all. I think we've got it. Definitely a whole lot easier with an electric driver. Right, so that's that one done. And there's also another warning on this page not to check the gear mesh until it's fully assembled. Right, so XT8E. It looks like this is going to run down this side on as XT8E. I believe the XT8 has two of them by the looks of it, and a different mount on here. And it looks like on the XT8E you have a screw running through all this, but on the XT8 Nitro you have a bar threaded on either end. Then we should have one more nut on there. Right, so moving on to top again. Little screw or little nut inside there, and then the 14mm I believe it is screw goes in the bottom. So that's got that on. And then we're moving on to front, so we want the front bumper and that in place. flipped over. So front bumper, and then we've got a bunch of these ones. And I think my electric screwdriver is struggling. I think it's getting ready for a charge. Just one more check on everything. And it's monsoon season again here. What better time to spend building an RC than when you can't go outside because it's chucking it down. Right, the only thing I'm questioning is why do I have a grub screw left? We have a spare grub screw. I think I put grub screws in both ends. Yep, grub screw and a grub screw. So maybe X-Ray's going as a spare grub screw. No body shell, but a grub screw. But that's as good a place as any to leave it. So we've now got rear suspension, front suspension. We've got his little X's. I believe the rears can go either way round. I can't see anything different on them. I think the fronts are slightly tapered on one side, but I don't think the rear ones are. But thanks again for watching Wtf Rc Cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to catch the rest of this build. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, and I'll catch you guys again in the next one.